It is hard in this world to define what peace can actually mean, specifically in terms of war and combat. With nations and organizations fighting for peace, we sometimes question the true motives behind each operation and conflict. However, within some countries, there are some military groups that stand firm behind their mottos and practice only defense, not just for themselves, but others around the world. And today we talk about one of the most interesting navies on the planet, not known for its size and might, but mostly for its values and, of course, its impressive history. Today, we look at the Netherlands Navy, the Dutch Navy, and learn about how it came to be and what it's all about. What's going on, guys? Dave Wapple here, and welcome to FTD Facts, the channel where I look at people, countries, and cultures, and especially when it comes to this video, militaries from all around the world. Now, the reason I do it is just because I love learning about many different places, and I like to not be in my own shell and expand my mind. And you know what, guys? If that's something that you guys really like doing, learning about different places and being, very knowledgeable, maybe a little bit smarter than your friends, yeah, well, you want to hit that subscribe button and that bell notification, because this is the kind of stuff that we do. Also, that reminds me, before we start this video, at any time you guys are liking this video and you want more Netherlands content or military content, be sure to hit the like button because, hey, if we get over 5,000 likes, then we will do more around this sort of stuff. That's how we do it here on FTD Facts. So let's get cracking. Now, one of the most amazing things that I found out when it came to the Dutch Navy was the fact that it is the oldest, well, one of the oldest navies in the entire world. It's been around for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, it's much older than the HMS Victory, which is the oldest ship that is currently still active today. As for the age of the Netherlands Navy, it was said to be founded on January 8th, 1488, which makes it over 500 years old. And the reason for this was simply due to the fact that the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian first issued the order to create a navy within the country in order to protect the commercial interests and trading of the country. And for this newly formed navy, the first admiral of it all was Lord of Ravenstein, Philip of Klebs. And of course, before this, the navy of the Dutch, they were known more as a private group rather than a government body. And the first admiral of that private group is thought to be a man named Jan Boek, who ran from 1383 to 1389. Now, jumping forward to what some historians say is the definitive moment for the Dutch Navy's introduction to the world was during the 80-Year War, which lasted from 1568 to 1648. It is also known as the Dutch Revolt, where Dutch communities from the lower countries formed their own rebelling groups and fought for their own independence against Philip II of Spain. It was during this time that these individual Dutch rebels created their own navy, in which they were called sea beggars. And one of the most notable battles during this time was the capture of Brielle on April 1st of 1572, in which, because of the Dutch victory, it created a light for the rest of the Dutch rebels, which eventually formed what is known as the Dutch Republic that was established in 1581. Now, to jump a little bit further, in the 17th century, the 1600s, one thing that I found really impressive is the fact that the Dutch Navy had become one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful navies on the entire planet. As a matter of fact, this was even during the time they were still fighting the Spaniards. And to demonstrate that, the Dutch had sent ships to Gibraltar in 1607, which resulted in the Battle of Gibraltar, which occurred on April 27th. Now, this was a very, very significant battle for the Dutch Navy, because it was on that day 26 Dutch ships led by Jacob van Heemskerk cruised right into the Bay of Gibraltar and absolutely devastated the main fleet of the Spanish Navy, which for this fleet consisted of 21 to 22 ships, and 10 of them were being massive fleet killers known as the galleons. And although most of the Spanish fleet was destroyed, the war went on till 1648, which was the year the Dutch Republic finally became recognized in the world. And although the 80-Year War had come to a close, combat for the Dutch Navy was far from over. It's because during this time, they had not only the biggest fleet, but they also had the strongest and most amount of merchant ships, and controlled much trade around the world. And of course, for the British and the French, they didn't like that all too much. And because the English and French had problems with the trade deals, it resulted in what is known as the First Anglo-Dutch War, which spanned 4 wars in total, and was a war that primarily consisted of Navy combat. It's also interesting to know that the first battle that started this particular war was known as the Battle of Goodwin Sands, which resulted in the Commonwealth declaring war on July 10th of 1552. Now, what's interesting about this battle is this one started out of the fact that the Dutch gave a lack of respect to the British. Because during that time, the British wanted absolute respect on all the waters, and they demanded that flags be striked when ships met. However, it was on May 29th, 1652, when the Dutch Lieutenant Admiral Martin Tromp refused to strike his flag, which began the first battle of the Anglo-Dutch War. However, unfortunately for the Dutch Navy, they became cornered by the French and English forces, and eventually lost the title of having the most powerful navy in the world, which resulted in the Dutch having to allow ships to pass through the East Indies for free. And it was at that point that the Royal Navy of Britain became the most dominant force on the planet. Now, let's fast forward a little bit more, because a lot of the modern form of the Netherlands is based off of stuff that happened in the 1800s. Because by 1850s, new technologies such as turrets and propellers had come into the Navy, making old ship line techniques outdated. Of these new ships were the Prins Hendrik der Nederlanden and the Koning der Nederlanden, which were classified as turret and ram ships. It should also be noted that the Koning was the largest in the fleet and was also the largest warship in the entire world during the 1800s. Of course, by the 1910s, this is when the Netherlands started to receive submarines, and although by the time of the Second World War, the Dutch Navy had no form of battleships or cruisers, but that doesn't mean that they weren't planning on making them. For the Netherlands, there was actually plans to build what is known as Project 1047, a battle cruiser in response to the Japanese threat. And it was actually the last ship that was in design phases before the Germans invaded the country and occupied it in February of 1940. It also should be mentioned that during the Second World War, they were honored for what they did at Dunkirk. This is because the Dutch Navy was in charge of escorting and assisting in the evacuations of the British and Canadian forces, which resulted in them saving thousands of lives. And among many of the battles that the Dutch Navy took part of, one of the most significant ones was the Battle of Java. And unfortunately for this particular battle, many Dutch forces were lost against the Imperial Japanese Navy. But one in particular was the HNLMS de Rutger, where Rear Admiral Karel Doorman chose to go down with his own ship after being torpedoed. As well, in between the months of February and April 1942, the Dutch had lost 20 ships of its navy, which almost annihilated the entire navy in the Asian campaigns. Now, since the war, the Netherlands has changed its tactics. By being a part of NATO, the Netherlands Navy is currently part of NATO squadrons, such as the Standing Naval Force Atlantic. Now, as of today, they have 4 submarines, which are known as the Walrus class, and are diesel and electric submarines that have been in operation since the 1990s. Also, I just want to mention that when it comes to the entire history of the Netherlands Navy, they've owned 56 submarines in total. And apparently it's a tradition in the submarine division that when you go on your last voyage, you are to throw your shoes overboard. As well, for destroyers, they have the De Zeven Provinciën class frigates, which were acquired in the early to mid 2000s, and they are named after the De Zeven Provinciën, which was the flagship for Michael de Rutger. For frigates, they have 2 of them, which are known as the Karel Doorman class frigates, named after Rear Admiral Karel Doorman, who went down with his ship during the Battle of Java. Of course, they have 4 offshore Holland Patrol class vessels, and all of this falls under the commander of the entire Navy, and that is Vice Admiral Rob Kramer. So there you have it, guys. That is us just looking at the Dutch Navy, the Navy from the Netherlands. What are your thoughts on these guys, and would you guys like to serve for them? My name is Dave Walpole, guys, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in and taking time to learn about this great military force, and most important, its history, because I find here on the channel when we talk about cultures, history is a very important thing when it comes to understanding people and cultures and where they came from. Also, before you guys get out of here, guys, if you liked this video and you want more Netherlands topics, or you just want more military topics, be sure to hit that like button, because if we get like over 5,000 likes, then we know to do a part 2. But today, you and I learned about the great Navy of the Netherlands, a Navy that, although may be very small today, but it is one particular Navy that does strive for peace today. And with its impressive history and sheer size during an earlier time, it reminds us that what is today will not always be. Thanks for watching. Okay, so here's some other videos that you guys should check out. Got some really cool military videos as well, and of course, some other videos around the Netherlands. Be sure to check them out, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.